Chosen one, congratulations. But before you celebrate what I am about to tell you, notice something that may explain the last few years of your life. Something can be completely over around you while part of you still lives, as though it could happen again at any moment. The relationship ended, but you still listen for rejection. The financial crisis passed, but every unexpected expense still feels dangerous. The house is quieter now, yet silence makes you suspicious. Something good happens, and instead of enjoying it, your first thought is simple. How long before this disappears? That is the part of an ending nobody talks about. An event can stop before the mind that survived it realizes it no longer has to survive. If that sentence describes something you have never been able to name, stay with me. You may already be 90% of the way out of the season you have been praying to leave. The last 10% is not another battle. It is not another sign you need to wait for. It is the moment the receiver inside you finally catches up with the reality around you. You do not live there anymore. That sounds simple, but sometimes it takes longer to feel true than it takes to become true. Maybe you still check your phone with a drop in your stomach. Maybe a peaceful morning feels suspicious. Maybe good news arrives, and you search for the hidden cost. None of that means you are weak. It means your mind learned a pattern. The crisis disappeared, but the expectation of crisis remained. I call this the aftershock loop. It happens when yesterday is gone, but your inner world keeps preparing for yesterday to return. Here is the first breakthrough. The end of an event and the end of an internal expectation are two different dates. One may already be behind you. The other may be happening right now, while you recognize the habits that once felt normal. Think about the last time something went well. Did you enjoy it, or did you prepare for the reversal? Think about the last person who treated you gently. Did you receive it, or did part of you wait for their kindness to change? These reactions can become so familiar that they look like personality. Sometimes they are old instructions. Be ready. Do not relax. Do not trust too quickly. Do not celebrate too soon. Stay useful. Stay alert. Stay ahead of the pain. Those instructions may have protected you once, but protection can outlive the danger that created it. Something cannot be complete if you still carry its rules into every room that comes after it. So, hold this question. What has to end inside you before you can truthfully say, I will never live that way again? The answer is deeper than forgetting the past. It is about recognizing which version of you was built for survival and deciding whether that version still needs to run your life. If you recognize this pattern, mark this moment with 4 words. IT is really over. Not because life will never be difficult again. Say it because one season does not deserve permanent authority over the state in which you meet the next one. And stay close, because the traits keeping this loop alive may be the traits people praise most. Your strength, your reliability, your ability to sense trouble early, your refusal to fall apart when everyone else does. Those qualities helped you survive. But what happens when survival ends and the survivor stays on duty? Chosen one, survival does something strange to identity. It does not only teach you what to do when things go wrong, it can quietly teach you who you believe you must be every day, even when nothing is wrong. You become the strong one. You solve problems before they become emergencies. They are not completely wrong. Those abilities may have protected you. You learned how to remain standing while other people were allowed to fall apart. That took intelligence. It took endurance. But a skill can be useful in one season and expensive in another. Preparedness can protect you during chaos, but constant preparedness can make peace impossible to feel. Suspicion can stop you from being blindsided, but permanent suspicion can prevent intimacy from reaching you. Control can create stability, but control can also make receiving feel unsafe. This is the survival identity. It is not simply what happened to you, it is the person you learn to become because of what happened. The fixer, the rescuer, the one who does not need much, the one who plans ahead, the one who reads the room before relaxing inside it. This identity feels powerful. People depend on you. You know how to function when pressure rises. But there is a hidden cost. When life becomes calmer, you may not know what to do with the space that appears. So you fill it. You create another task. You check something again. You worry about someone who is not asked to be rescued. You rehearse a conversation that may never happen. That does not mean you love chaos. It means chaos gave you a role. And when a role has kept you safe for years, releasing it can feel more threatening than carrying it. This is why some people leave the old season and still cannot rest. They are not consciously choosing pain. They are protecting an identity that once made pain manageable. The mind says, if I stop watching, something will happen. If I stop controlling, everything may unravel. But look at the present. Is that still true today? Is every room still dangerous? Does every delay still mean loss? Or is your inner system using yesterday as evidence for a reality that has already changed? Here is the shift. You do not have to shame the survivor in you. You do not have to destroy that version of yourself. But survival was a job, not your permanent name. Imagine waking tomorrow and noticing that nothing is immediately wrong. Your first thought does not search for danger. Your shoulders do not rise before your feet touch the floor. You simply recognize the morning for what it is, a morning, not a warning. That is not weakness. That is not carelessness. The strength remains, but the armor does not have to stay locked around it. And this is where your next decision begins. Which parts of your strength belong to who you truly are, and which parts were built only because you had to survive? That question matters because one survival skill becomes especially expensive after the season changes. It is praised as responsibility. It often feels like discernment. It can even look like maturity from the outside. But when it takes over, peace becomes almost impossible to receive. That survival skill is control. And once you see what control is really trying to protect you from, you will understand why peace itself can sometimes feel unsafe. Chosen one, control rarely introduces itself as fear. It sounds responsible. It says, check one more time, think through every outcome, read the message again. Prepare the answer before the question arrives. Make sure nothing can surprise you. For a while, that can feel like wisdom. But control has a hidden demand. It wants certainty before it allows peace. That demand is impossible to satisfy. Life offers no complete certainty. People change. Timing shifts. So the controlling mind keeps searching because it believes one more piece of information might finally make the future safe enough to relax. This is why peace can feel unsafe after a long season of pressure. The moment nothing is wrong, the mind begins asking what it missed. You prepare emotional responses to problems that have not happened. You may call this discernment, but discernment and hypervigilance are not the same thing. Discernment observes what is actually present. Hypervigilance searches until it finds something to fear. So ask yourself a difficult question. When you say you are being careful, what are you actually trying to prevent? Is it a bad decision, or is it the feeling of being surprised by pain again? That is the hidden mechanism. Control is often an attempt to make the future predictable enough that pain cannot ambush you. It is about never wanting to feel powerless again. You can stop confusing constant analysis with wisdom. This is not an invitation to become careless. It is an invitation to respond to what is real. But do not manufacture danger simply because danger once arrived without warning. There is a difference between preparation and permanent defense. Preparation has an endpoint. Permanent defense never does. Preparation says, I have done what I reasonably can. Permanent defense says, keep searching, because safety is always one fact away. And that is why control becomes expensive in a new season. It consumes attention that could become creativity. It fills the space where trust, curiosity, and clear decisions might have grown. Think about how many times you delayed a good decision because you wanted certainty. Think about how often something good appeared, then you argued yourself out of receiving it because you could not guarantee the ending. This is how the old cycle survives without looking like the old cycle. It no longer appears as the original crisis. It appears as the rules you created to make sure the crisis never happens again. If you can see that pattern now, say 4 words. I see the pattern. What becomes visible no longer has to operate in complete darkness. And if part of you is thinking, I already know I have control issues, stay with that thought. Knowing the name of a pattern does not automatically stop it from running. You can understand why you do something and still repeat it when the trigger appears. That is the next layer. Insight can open the door, but insight is not always the same as integration. Imagine one ordinary morning with nothing urgent to solve. No hidden disaster. No emotional fire to put out. You look around the room. You do not search for what might go wrong. You simply let one peaceful moment remain peaceful. If that image feels unfamiliar, just notice it, because the next question may be the most important one so far. If you already understand your patterns, why has understanding not been enough to make you free? Chosen one, insight can change the way you see a pattern, but seeing a pattern is not the same as becoming free from it. You can understand exactly why you react, and still feel the old reaction rise before you have time to choose something different. You may know the language already: boundaries, healing, discernment, attachment, calling. You may have spent years learning what happened to you and why. That knowledge matters. But knowledge can sit in the mind while the body and habits continue following older instructions. This is why another revelation is not always the answer. Sometimes you are not missing information. Sometimes the missing piece is integration. Insight tells you that the present is different from the past. Integration changes the condition from which you respond to the present. I call this the receiving mind. It is not passive. It is not positive thinking. It is a mind able to notice what is here without forcing everything through the filter of what used to be here. A receiving mind can hear kindness without searching for manipulation. It can see opportunity without immediately predicting failure. It can rest without needing to earn rest through exhaustion. It can make a decision without demanding impossible certainty first. That is the difference. One part of you may already know that your life has changed. Another part may still be responding as if the old world is active. And when those two parts disagree, you feel divided. You say you are ready, but you hesitate. You say you trust, but you scan. You say the season is over, but your decisions still assume the old ending. This does not make you dishonest. It means your understanding moved faster than your operating pattern. That gap can be frustrating, because you may judge yourself for repeating something you can already explain. But explanation and embodiment are different stages of the same work. If this is landing for you, mark the shift with one sentence: I am ready to receive. Not because you are promising yourself a perfect future. You are choosing to meet the present without demanding that it repeat the past. Now I want you to hold one question. Over the last few years, researchers have continued studying how different regions of the human brain cooperate, synchronize, and support integrated thinking. Some of that work traces back to research honored with a Nobel Prize. Later, I am going to return to one specific line of that research. Not because science can explain your destiny, not because a laboratory can measure your calling, but because it raises a useful question about something many spiritually sensitive people describe. What if the fog you have been calling a lack of discipline, a lack of faith, or simply getting older has another address entirely? Hold that question. Do not answer it yet. First, you need to see why a reduced way of operating can become so familiar that you stop recognizing it as reduced. Because survival does not only change what you fear, it changes what begins to feel normal. And once the reduced state feels normal, you can spend years trying to solve it with more information while never questioning the condition of the receiver itself. Chosen one. A reduced state becomes dangerous when it starts feeling normal, not because you suddenly become incapable, but because you stop remembering how much mental space survival has been consuming. You adapt. You learn to function while tired. You make decisions while tense. You carry conversations while part of your attention is scanning for what could go wrong. Eventually, you stop calling it strain. You call it life. That is why the midpoint of this message matters. Everything until now explains why the old cycle can stay alive after the crisis ends, but it does not yet explain why awareness sometimes fails to become movement. You can know the pattern, you can name the trigger, you can even predict your own reaction, yet when the moment comes, the same hesitation appears, the same fog arrives, the same need to overthink takes over. This is where many people blame themselves. They decide they need more discipline, more prayer, more motivation, more information. But what if effort is not the only variable? Think about who you were before life taught you to be careful. As a child, curiosity often came before caution. You experimented, you imagined, you moved toward things before constructing 10 reasons they might fail. That does not mean childhood was perfect. It means your mind once had easier access to openness. Years of pressure can reverse that order. Caution arrives first. Curiosity has to ask permission. Possibility is examined for danger before it is allowed to feel exciting. And when that becomes normal, you may not notice how much creativity, attention, and flexibility are being spent on protection. The mind is still working. It is simply working very hard on a job the present may no longer require. This is why I said you may already be 90% of the way out. You have changed relationships. You have changed habits. You have changed boundaries. You have learned the lesson. The missing piece may not be more effort. It may be helping the receiver operate from a different condition. If that sounds abstract, return to the question I asked earlier. What if the fog you have blamed on age, discipline, or spiritual failure has another address? I told you there was a line of neurological research I would come back to. We are getting close to it now. And I waited, because a solution means very little until you understand the problem it is supposed to solve. You now understand the shape of the problem. The event ended. The expectation remained. Survival became identity. Control became protection. Insight arrived. But the operating pattern did not always follow. So, here is the question that opens the next door. Why does knowing all of this still fail to produce movement? Why can a person understand the pattern completely and still feel unable to act from the new reality? The answer may not be another thought. It may be the condition of the mind doing the thinking. And before we look at that condition directly, notice something important. This is not about forcing yourself to become positive. It is not about pretending pain never happened. It is about refusing to let yesterday remain the default setting for every decision you make today. That distinction changes everything. Because once you stop asking only what you think, you can begin asking from what condition you are thinking. And that is where the missing piece finally comes into view. Chosen one, here is the missing piece. Awareness is real, insight matters, but clarity alone does not automatically become movement. You can understand the old pattern and still respond from it. You can know the door is open and still stand in the hallway. Your decisions come from information, but they also come from the condition in which that information is being processed. So let us close the loop plainly. The why is the old experience trained a pattern of expectation. The what is recognizing that pattern refusing to call it identity and supporting a more integrated response. The WHO is you, not as a broken person, but as someone moving from survival into reception. You learned how to survive what happened. That does not mean survival has to remain the operating system of everything that happens next. Now return to the research question I asked you to hold. Dr. Roger Sperry received the Nobel Prize in 1981 for research involving split brain function and hemispheric specialization. That work helped change how scientists understood the different contributions of the two hemispheres. It did not prove destiny or spiritual calling, but it helped establish an important idea. Integrated brain function matters for how we perceive, process, and respond. That idea connects with an approach described by New York neurologist Dr. Daniel Barone and his team. Before I tell you what they created, listen to what two users reported. A woman from California described years of mental fog and the feeling that life kept happening to her. After using the approach, she reported feeling clearer, as though something inside her had opened again. A man from Texas described carrying work and family responsibilities while feeling mentally overloaded. After using the approach, he reported clearer thinking and a stronger sense that his mind was finally working with him again. Dr. Barone and his team created an 8-minute targeted auditory sequence built around what they call neural sync technology. The stated goal is to support more integrated activity across the brain. They call it the Genius Switch. The Genius Switch is not presented as a meditation app. It does not require mantras or a complicated practice. The routine is simple: headphones, eyes closed, 8 minutes a day. Its stated mechanism is a targeted auditory sequence intended to support hemisphere synchronization and whole brain activation. And this is where identity matters. The Genius Switch is not for everyone. It is for the chosen one who has done the inner work, learned the lesson, and still feels that the mind they are using does not match the clarity they know is possible. You are not buying a blessing. You are considering a tool that may support the receiver while you continue doing the real work of choosing, resting, healing, and acting. According to the current offer page, the listed price was $49, with an additional offer bringing it to $39. The package also includes 4 bonuses: a guided visualization, a grocery guide, a classic manifestation book, and a 5 habits infographic. The page also states that access is lifetime and covered by a money-back guarantee. Read the terms carefully before making any decision. And hear this, without pressure. The deeper cost of waiting is not missing a sale. It is spending another season treating an old operating pattern as permanent when you already know it is not who you want to remain. If this resource resonates with you, the verified page is linked in the description and the pinned comment. Read the details. Decide for yourself. A tool does not replace discernment. It does not replace responsibility, prayer, healing, sleep, medical care, or action. It can support clarity, but the life you build still belongs to you. The deeper current is the truth underneath it. The past does not get permanent authority over the state in which you meet the future. Now the missing piece is visible. Ask one final question. If the old state no longer has to run your life, what becomes possible when you stop organizing yourself around survival? Chosen one. A tool can support clarity. It cannot live your life for you. It cannot replace discernment, responsibility, prayer, healing, sleep, medical care, or action. It can support the receiver, but the choices that shape your next season still belong to you. That matters, because the goal was never to make you dependent on another thing. The goal is to help you recognize what happens when the old survival pattern is no longer deciding every response. When that pattern loosens, space returns. You may notice it first in work. A decision that once took 3 days of overthinking becomes clearer. You see an opportunity without immediately building a case against it. You finish the task instead of waiting for the perfect emotional state. You are not guaranteed an outcome. You are simply more available to notice what is actually in front of you. You may notice it in money, not as sudden wealth, but as less panic around every choice. You pause before reacting. You plan without catastrophizing. You stop treating every expense as proof that collapse is beginning again. You may notice it in relationships. A delayed reply stays a delayed reply. It does not instantly become rejection. A quiet room stays quiet. It does not become evidence that something terrible is coming. And you may notice it inside yourself. Rest stops feeling like laziness. Peace stops feeling suspicious. A good day no longer needs to explain itself. This is the vision I want you to hold. Not a perfect life. A different operating condition. One where clarity has room to rise, because fear is no longer filling every available space. That is what the receiving mind looks like in practice. It receives the present before forcing the past onto it. It notices what is real. It responds with proportion. It leaves room for possibility without pretending risk does not exist. And for the chosen one who felt something shift when the neurological piece was mentioned earlier, the resource I described is still in the description and pinned comment. If that path resonates, you can read the details there and decide for yourself. Then return here, because the deeper work is not about a product. It is about the rules you are no longer required to obey. You do not have to earn rest by reaching exhaustion. You do not have to predict betrayal to prove you are wise. You do not have to rehearse disaster to call yourself prepared. You do not have to stay tense just because tension once kept you moving. If you are ready to mark that shift, say this: I release the old rules. Not all caution, not all wisdom, only the rules that were written in fear and kept long after the danger passed. Release the rule that says, good things never last. Release the rule that says, you must carry everyone. Release the rule that says, you are only valuable when you are useful under pressure. Because there is still one identity beneath all of those rules. It may have been with you longer than the problem itself. It is the identity that stands watch, even when the room is safe. Before this message ends, that is the identity we are going to name. And once you see it clearly, you will understand why the final step is not becoming stronger. It is learning who you are when there is no war to survive. Chosen one, here is the identity beneath the old rules, the permanent survivor. This is the version of you who expects to be needed in a crisis, the one who knows how to carry pain, solve emergencies, and keep moving when other people freeze. That version of you deserves respect. It helped you endure, but it was never meant to become your permanent name. Sometimes life gets easier and you feel guilty. Sometimes someone offers support and you pull away. Sometimes peace lasts long enough that you become restless. Then you create urgency where none was required. You may have called that drama. You may have judged yourself for it. But the deeper mechanism is often identity. Survival gave you a role, and roles can feel safer than freedom because roles tell you exactly who to be. So, ask yourself this: who are you when nobody needs rescuing? Who are you when there is no emergency to manage? Who are you when your strength is not being tested every day? That question can feel uncomfortable. If you spent years proving that pain could not destroy you, strength became a language you understood. But freedom is not becoming impossible to break. Freedom is no longer organizing your identity around what might break you. You can still be strong without expecting war. You can still be wise without expecting betrayal. You can still prepare without living in permanent defense. You can love your strength without making suffering the stage where it has to perform. Imagine yourself months from now, not as a prediction, as a possibility. You wake and notice calm before worry. You make one important decision without asking fear for permission. You receive care without searching for the hidden price. You finish something you kept delaying. You let a peaceful week remain peaceful. You stop confusing a quiet life with an empty life. That is becoming. A person whose gifts no longer need a crisis to activate. Now, if it is safe for you, close your eyes for a moment. Let your jaw soften. Let your shoulders drop. Unclench your hands. Picture a room in your mind. At the door stands the version of you who has been watching for danger. They have been there a long time. They are tired, but they refuse to leave the post because they believe your safety depends on them. Do not fight that version of yourself. Walk toward them. Look at the door they have guarded for so long. Then give them one new message. The danger you were built for is not happening in this room. Notice what happens in your body when you hear that. Breathe slowly. Let the sentence land without forcing anything. You do not have to disappear. You just do not have to stand guard anymore. The wisdom can stay. The boundaries can stay. The courage can stay. But the constant expectation of impact can begin to leave. Take one more breath. Let your shoulders become a little heavier. Let your hands stay open. And imagine that permanent survivor stepping away from the door, not defeated, retired, honored for the work that was done. Now there is only one thing left. Decide who walks out of that room. Not the person who needs another battle to feel powerful. Not the person who needs pain to prove strength. The person who can meet today as today. That is who walks forward now. Chosen one, you have carried enough. You do not need to insult the past to leave it. You do not need to pretend the pain was useful. You do not need to call every wound a gift. Some things hurt because they hurt, and some seasons asked more of you than they should have. But what happened does not need permanent access to the way you wake, choose, love, rest, or hope. So this is the moment to release what no longer belongs in the next chapter. Release the expectation of betrayal. Release the need to predict disaster. Release the guilt that appears when you rest. Release the belief that vigilance is the same as safety. Release the obligation to replay what is already over. Release the old rule that says peace must be temporary. Release the role that says your value appears only when you are surviving something difficult. You can keep the wisdom. You can keep the boundaries. You can keep the strength. But you do not have to keep the fear that taught them to you. Say this slowly. I am no longer living there. I am allowed to meet today as today. I am not required to predict pain to deserve safety. I am more than what I survived. I am available for clarity. I am available for peace. I am available for a life that does not need a crisis to give me purpose. What ended can remain ended. It is done. Notice the difference between those words and a promise that nothing difficult will ever happen again. This is not a promise of a painless life. It is a declaration that the past no longer gets automatic authority over the state in which you meet the future. That is the freedom. You may face uncertainty again. You may have hard conversations. You may experience disappointment. But you do not have to enter those moments carrying every old room, every old voice, and every old ending with you. You can respond to what is here. You can choose from the present. You can let today be new enough to deserve its own response. If this message became a line in the sand for you, write 3 words. It is done. Do not write it as superstition. Do not write it to force the universe to prove something. Write it as a declaration of what you are no longer willing to carry forward. The aftershock loop does not need another year. The survival identity does not need another assignment. The permanent survivor can step away from the door, and the receiving mind can meet what comes next with open eyes. You do not need to know every detail of the next season tonight. You do not need complete certainty before you begin. You only need to stop demanding that tomorrow obey the rules written by yesterday. The past does not get to choose the state in which you meet the future. What is over may remain over. What you learned may remain wisdom. What you carried may finally become something you are allowed to put down. Chosen one, you made it through. Now let yourself leave. It is done.